Hey there, welcome back. My name is Shireen and I'm going to be your guide today as we continue on our journey of learning Illustrator and creating vector artwork. First of all, we began by looking at our workspace, getting familiar with our tools, creating our paths and shapes with our pen tool and shape tool and beyond. And now we're ready to start really looking at sort of the different aspects of the objects that we're making so that we can move on to create some beautiful artwork. So today let's focus on the stroke. All right, so we're going to get started. This shape tool here is showing us the rectangle. Again, as a review, any tool that has that triangle down at the right hand bottom, we're going to go ahead and click and hold and not release until we see that second triangle, and then we're going to get the tear off panel. This is going to reveal all of the related tools. And we're going to go ahead and maybe let's start with a star. Star is one of my favorite tools. I'm going to create this star here. And I'm also going to go on a side tangent to show you that actually if we use, I'm going to go ahead and create a tear off panel for my pens. If you remember from our other video, we talked about the delete anchor point tool. I kind of just want to show you what happens if we keep deleting anchor points until we're left with 3. We've got a triangle. And so conversely, we can do the opposite by double clicking onto the star tool. Conversely, we can do the opposite by clicking on the star tool to select, clicking once on the artboard to activate, and then we can just simply choose a 3-sided quote-unquote star, which as we know 3-sided means it's just going to be a triangle. Okay, so that's a little extra tip there for you. And so looking at this triangle, we see that it's filled with the color blue for fill, black for stroke. We see that information here in our toolbar, but we also see it up here in the control panel. I want to keep reminding you that it's a good idea to keep your eyes up here because this panel is dynamic. That means it's changing according to the task at hand. So as Illustrator sees what you're working on down here, it's offering related tasks. It's offering related support for the work you're doing here on the artboard. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this stroke panel here, and I can click again, looking into the Adobe workspace, the Adobe interface, triangles and arrows and these little V's down here, right? That means, haha, look under here, there's more information. So that's how we know where to get our stroke color. So I could choose, we've got black, but let me choose red so it'll be a little bit more obvious. You still can't see it because my path is selected. So I'm going to go ahead up here again to my control panel and I'm going to increase the size so you can see that more clearly. I'm also, since I'm up here looking at the stroke panel, in my control panel, I'm going to show you that any word that has an underline in the stroke panel means that it also has the option for you to click and access the full panel. You can do that here as well for opacity and for the transform. But I want to show you that you can do it very easily here from the control panel. But if for whatever reason your control panel isn't showing, you can also go up to Window, Control. See, there it is, it's disappeared. Sometimes we'll get that view. You can click on Control to get that back. And you can also have its own independent stroke panel, just like all the other panels, by checking under Window. So these are panels that show in your window. They don't print, and so we find all of our panels in Window. So the stroke panel is already out here, so let's drag it out and kind of put it here right next to us so we can get started. So today we're investigating stroke. So we already saw how we can increase the weight or reduce the weight of the stroke. But it's a good thing that we've got this triangle. Let me go ahead and get rid of that other original primitive triangle. It's a good thing we've got the triangle here in front of us because I want to select that with my black selection tool and show you that we can also have control over how we view the stroke on any object. And so here, the way that the strokes are joining at the anchor points is in what we call the miter join. If I wanted that to look a little bit rounder, a little bit softer, I'm going to continue to keep zeroing in because I really want you to see this makes a huge difference. You're affecting the view of this effect of the stroke. The stroke isn't really there. It's something that's, again, totally editable. You can just click on round stroke and you're going to get that much nicer, softer feel. click on miter, and we've got that point, and click on bevel, and it kind of just levels it off. All right, so if we go back to stroke, let's click off. Click off means sort of, you know, clicking onto the artboard so that we're not selecting anything in particular. Just selecting the artboard is another way of saying deselect what you're working on. Just give yourself a breather. So we're selecting, clicking on the artboard to deselect. And I want to also take this opportunity to talk a little bit again about big picture. So I mentioned a lot about big picture, the big sort of overview of, you know, the concepts of how Illustrator works. I want to call your attention. Right now we've got that triangle selected. We also see under transparency, we're getting a preview of it here. We can also choose, so what we're looking at here, right? And this is how it's going to print. It's going to print with that blue fill. It's going to print with that red stroke. It's going to print with that stroke at a point like that. What's not going to print is that bounding box, because again, that's just sort of the way that we're working with the object. That's the way that we're selecting it. But let's take an opportunity here to go under View, pull down menu to get tasks related to how we view and interact with this object. And I want to just call your attention to, I'm actually going to, for the purpose of doing this, I'm going to go ahead and do a Command C, and I'm going to do a Command V, which means paste. So I did a edit copy, Command C, and I did an edit paste, Command V. And I did that because I'm going to select both of these identical triangles, and now I'm going to go under View, and the way that I want to view these triangles is under Outline. And it's going to show you then the outline. The whole space goes to white. It's showing you that we've literally just got these two objects on an artboard, period. So what you're kind of seeing in this view, think of it as the skeleton. So without all of the muscles, without the flesh, you're just looking at the skeleton of the artwork that you are creating. And so if we go back into View, GPU Preview, you're looking at this artwork in the same way that it would print. So it literally would print as you see it visually. I wanted to do all that because, again, let's revisit stroke, round join. You can see now that they actually look a little bit different in the way that the strokes come around those corners, right? So here we've got that round join, here we've got that traditional miter join. But again, when I go under View, Outline, aha, they look the same. So what's happening? The stroke is working in such a way that we call this an effect in Illustrator. And so an effect means it's a visual effect. It's not altering or changing the actual structure underneath. And so these triangles, as you see, are exactly the same, but under View, Preview, we can see that they're starting to look a little bit different. I can actually make this one look even more different by, you know, sort of really changing the color, the fill. I can actually take the stroke off altogether by choosing None. Or I can do that, I'm not sure if that's coming up in the window, so I'm choosing None. I can do that by clicking here into my toolbar. All right, and so again, they're starting to look fairly different, but again, under View, the structure is still the same. So that's going to start to come into play the more we start creating more artwork. So let's go back to View. I've deleted away those triangles. Let's come back and keep investigating. Let's create, again, another triangle. Took the stroke off. Let's add a stroke back. Let's go back under stroke and let's make it yellow so we can see it. Again, so I'm going to come in, create that big heavy stroke, and let's continue. Other options for working in your stroke panel. So we can change the cap, and the cap just means I'm going to use the line tool to do this. Line tool, I'm not going to create a closed path. It's going to be an open path. So again, getting you used to the terminology. I'm going to just create a simple line. And I just want to show you again, cap means, when it says cap here, this means that right at the edge where the anchor point is, it just comes right off to a cap. Here it comes to that round cap, and then again, a projecting cap. So again, here's cap right at the anchor point, and the projecting cap where it gives you a little bit of that buffer. Okay, so these are the different options for cap and corner. Let's talk about how we align the stroke. Aligning the stroke means that the visual of the effect that we're seeing is happening. It's giving a little bit of color to the right, a little bit of color to the outside, a little bit of color to the inside. Or we can see the whole stroke coming towards the inside, or we can see it shifting the whole stroke visual effect of that color happening to the outside of the path. All right, so here's the actual path, to the inside of the path, to the outside of the path, equidistant on either side. Another fun thing we can do, I'm going to take the weight down a little bit more so this really shows up. I'm actually going to also just select black down here. Where did I grab that black from? Oops. Where did I grab that black from? From my control panel. It's got these little defaults down here. Select my stroke, make it black. I really want you to be able to see this. Dash the line. Aha! Okay, so we can dash the line, and for our work in fashion, since I have my background in fashion and textile, this is important because it starts to help us to be able to create stitching. So right now the default is set to 12-point stroke, 12-point gap. I'm going to make it look even more like stitching. I like to use the 2-to-1 ratio. So let me do that again. I'm going to do undo a couple times. Here's 12-to-1. I'm going to say 2-point dash, hit return to accept. Let me actually do a 4-point gap so you can see how that looks. All right, I'm actually going to make the dash a little bit bigger. Let's make it 6. So it'll be a 6-to-4. All right, so we see a little bit more stroke, a little bit less gap, and you can play around with that, customize it as you wish. Let's continue exploring our stroke panel. I'm going to create a line. So it was still, the dash line is still selected on that stroke panel, so I can deselect it, activate it, deactivate it accordingly. I just want to move down here to our arrowheads and show you how easy it is to just toggle down here to see the rest of the menu, and I'm going to select any number of different effects. There's really fun hand ones right down there, some scissors, a little daisy at the bottom. Let's select arrow number 2. All right, the size of the arrow is, the actual arrowhead is a bit ginormous compared to the little line that we created. Not to worry, as soon as you activate the arrowheads, look what just popped up, the scale. So I'm actually going to take that scale down. I'm going to type 50 on my keyboard and hit return to accept. And now that looks a little bit more in proportion to the line that I'm working on. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that same. If I choose, I could either choose another arrowhead and also keep the same proportion, same scale, or I could also obviously choose the tail of the arrow there. Okay, and I can align to have the arrow starting right at the arrow anchor point or extending past. And then here for stroke profiles, now it starts to get a little bit more fun. We're going to start looking at how we can customize and vary the width of the stroke. So the stroke here, as you see, is 5 points. It's 5 points of stroke here, 5 points of stroke here. There's no variation. I'm going to take off the arrowheads for now because I'm going to start having some crazy fun with these strokes. I want to just show you that there are preset profiles to help you to start to vary the width of your stroke. You can choose something like width profile 2. These are already defaults found already in your panel. Click on that, and now let's take a look at what's happening. At its widest point, it's probably a 5, but at its thinnest point here, it looks like it's probably less than like 0.25. So you realize in the end, remember, you can go under view and you'll see that it's the same structure underneath. It's just a line. But when we go under view, GPU preview, you'll see that the stroke width has varied. It's thin to thicker to very thin to thicker, etc. I can use the bounding box to lengthen that line, right? But that same premise exists, thin to thick to thin to thick. So that's because that profile dictates it's varying the width. So on that note, we're going to take a look at the width tool and click on that width tool. And that width tool, as soon as we select it, different points around which I can vary the width will start to appear. Aha! So what's happening? Okay, I'm gonna just click onto the artboard, click off. So what's happening is that this is still that same line under View Outline. Nothing has changed in the structure, but the width tool allows us to vary the width of the stroke visually, and it allows us to create much more fluid lines and have some fun and play. So it doesn't just have to be that uniform. It does not have to be that uniform stroke where it's exactly 5 points at every juncture of the line. It can be a little bit more fluid and you can have some more fun. Last but not least, since you're playing around with the width tool, I'd love you to do one more thing for me. I want you to play around with the following functionality. Create a really fun line, have some fun with it, kind of squiggle around and kind of make it thin, thick, thin. You're using the width tool to kind of just, oh, also too, your modifier keys. Remember those modifier keys. You're playing around at different points wherever these circles pop up, and when I click with Alt or Option on a Mac held down, Alt for a PC, Option for a Mac, if I just have that held down, only one side, it doesn't have to be an equidistant edit, okay? And also Command, okay, so we can kind of have these little fun little variances. Once you do that, under Profile, when you open up that panel, drop down panel, you can go ahead and add this to your profiles. So let me kind of call this SS or Shireen Demo 1 and say OK. It's now saved. It's one of your profiles. And what I want to show you is that since it's one of the profiles that's saved with Illustrator, you can now apply that profile to anything. So let's take off the dashed line of our triangle and scroll down and look at this crazy fun little squiggly line. I've created that. It's not that crazy on that triangle. It's kind of fun, and it looks a little bit more hand-drawn, a little bit more free-form. It's not as technical. It's not as restricted. So you can kind of start to see how when we're going to start creating artwork, this line looks a little bit more naturalistic. I want to also show you that you can increase it altogether or decrease it accordingly, and at any time you can always go back, grab that width tool, and continue to keep editing on the fly. Okay. At any point, go ahead and grab that line. If you enjoy that, go ahead and add it to your profiles. And now you can alternate between your saved profiles. So now you're starting to do some really fun advanced work with your stroke. And in our next video, we're going to take a look at the fill and all the different options on how we can fill our objects. So be sure to subscribe. Be sure to check out that next video. Grab Illustrator, grab that pen tool, those shape tools, start making beautiful artwork. Thanks for watching.